What's a truth no one wants to hear? That is certainly the case for me. We always just called it sitting cross-legged. The applesauce one sounds incredibly childish. I have only ever heard the term in kindergarten classrooms. Sitting Indian style is new to me. Entirely an Americanism, I guess. Still not as bad as saying something happened on accident. That is just so common now and it drives me up the wall. If you're talking about the farting Dutch oven, it's named after the cooking vessel that the Dutch created, because you're enclosing someone into a heated container. It's not a shot at the Dutch saying they fart a lot, but I'll add one. Indian giver. What, you guys gave us all this land and now you want it back? That's pretty rude. Yup. Our brains undergo processes called leveling, sharpening, and assimilation to fit the schemas that we've developed over time. Since memory is reconstructive, we gloss over little details that we deem unimportant, focus on details that we see as important, and assimilate aspects of the story to fit our perception of reality. This effect compounds over time. A psychologist named Bartlett performed an experiment that supported this idea of reconstructive memory. Look up War of the Ghosts if you're interested, it's pretty fascinating. I just watched Watership Down for the first time since I was traumatized by it as a young child. I could have sworn that so much was different when I watched it as a kid. For example, I distinctly remember being horrified by a scene where the rabbits rest in the field, near where Violet gets snatched by the bird, and one rabbit gives birth. Then the next scene is the rabbits waking up to a bunch of kittens. Baby rabbits hanging on a bush or something. It was horrible, but I almost wanted to see it again to prove to myself that I could deal with it. The first part, talking about the creation of animals, still freaked me out though. Scary. This may sound really stupid, but I started believing a lot more in all that clandestine, sketchy shit governments are suspected of doing after I started playing EVE, after seeing firsthand all the manipulating and the backroom scheming that goes on in the large alliances over internet spaceships. The gov sure as shit is doing it over stuff that matters. I agree with you. I think a lot of times people try to distance it so much from alcohol that they lose your prerogative. You wouldn't start drinking at 2 p.m. if you had errands to run, homework to do, and had to help your dad build a fence. You would grab a drink after all was done to relax and contemplate your day. Why should smoking be any different? It's true. My so and I smoke daily, but to me it's not a big deal. I can go days without no problem, and do so often. She, however, can't function without it, and it's affecting our relationship, because it makes her unmotivated. Her being unmotivated means she doesn't take initiative when it comes to basic cleaning tasks that should be done daily, like simple things that take literally a minute to do, taking out the trash and whatnot. Despite how many times we have the conversation, I typically end up doing everything. Last time we fought about it, she said she has a hard time getting motivated. I didn't tell her I thought we'd might be the issue, but I might soon. If it prevents you from taking care of basic chores, it's a problem. Plus, if she isn't high, she's on edge, and that also affects me. I can tell on the days I'm home when she gets off work. She comes in pissed off, and usually picks a fight. The days where I come home she's already high and everything is hunky-dory. Reminds me a lot of the South Park quote. Well, Stan, the truth is marijuana probably isn't gonna make you kill people, and it most likely isn't gonna fund terrorism, But, well son, pot makes you feel fine with being bored, and it's when you're bored that you should be learning some new skill or discovering some new science or being creative. If you smoke pot you may grow up to find out that you aren't good at anything. That's what the danger of weed is, it makes you happy with being bored. That's what I dislike most about stoner culture. They often have this revolutionary attitude, but in the end it's only big talk, because the weed makes them feel good to the point that they don't actually want to improve anything, including themselves. Edit. I am aware of the debate unfolding in the wake of this comment. In light of this, I want to point out that I was talking about stoner culture, not people who occasionally smoke weed, but people who base their identity around weed. Easy to find on pretty much every single college campus. We seem to need to be reminded of this. The scientific method, besides being one of mankind's defining achievements, is far and away the best teller of truth. Opinions based on it are superior to opinions based on whatever you know to be true. The scientific method often compels a person to conditionally accept ideas as true. To reject rigorously tested and confirmed science, it is simple babbling nonsense. I can't believe this appears to need to be said now. People don't get what they deserve. Life is totally unfair. Also, people tend to usually overestimate their morality, and how good of a person they are. There's this pervasive idea with humans about what they deserve, or do not deserve, and most of it is made up bullshit. Look at the millions of people that play the lottery, and each one thinks they deserve it more than everyone else. Objectively speaking, how can that be? Or the idea of a soulmate or love of your life is romantic jibber-jabber. Relationships won't magically work because you found that one person in all the billions of people. You have to compromise, empathize and be ready to make a relationship work. And as we all grow and change throughout our lives, sometimes who we become isn't who we were and relationships end, and that's no one's fault. You can't always fight nature and win. There it is. This is the big one. I found a woman that I love and can stand to look in the face every day and say good morning to. I am not afraid that our love will die, but I do fear that she will. She is a fine lady, but she drives like a stereotype and she is as majestic as a water buffalo falling over. This is the side of love they never mention. The random and unavoidable fear that they died. If she is 5 minutes past her projected arrival time, my brain instantly says, she probably died. It's time to prepare for the worst. You will never find another. To be fair, everything anyone does is in self-interest. There is no such thing as a truly selfless act. Anything I do is to make myself feel better or to prevent myself from feeling bad. I give to charity and I feel good. I'm not shitty to people because I'd feel bad. I buy my girlfriend flowers cause it makes me happy when she's happy. Anyone that thinks you can do selfless things hasn't thought about it enough. But why there needs to be this dichotomy at all? There are a lot of things in between single and married for life. Being single doesn't have to feel lonely. You can date around or be with one person for a while without making serious commitment. And even if you do find someone perfect for you, there's no guarantee they'll stay alive for as long as you are, so you may end up single again at any moment. Plus, if you haven't found someone to spend your life with, doesn't mean you never will. Elderly people get married too, not to mention date and have relationships. I guess my point is, there shouldn't be this emphasis on your relationship status at all. It's not like it's permanent or anything. There's settling and settling. I wasn't all that into my girlfriend when I first met her. There's nothing wrong with her at all, just wasn't that initial spark that comes with a lot of new relationships. I decided to stick with her because I knew she'd be good for me even though I didn't have the butterflies infatuation that I'd had with other girls in the past. 3 years later I'm happier than I've ever been. Relationships are too romanticized. Find someone you can build a life with, and who you can trust. The rest is bullshit. Your heart doesn't make good decisions, your head does. I don't think it's as bleak as this. In reality, there's probably thousands of people out there that you could be happy with. Who you end up with is a matter of circumstance. But if you find someone who makes you happy, it's worth it to hang on to them and put in the work. No one has a perfect partner. If you are lucky enough to connect with someone as a friend and a partner, don't take it for granted. Some people are not lucky enough to connect with another person to the point where they're happy. You shouldn't settle, but you should appreciate what you have for what it is. People cheat and break up because the grass is always greener. But at the end of the day, people just want someone who cares about them, who they can talk to, and who they can depend on. Love is friendship, companionship, and most importantly, a choice to stick by another person through tough times. Passion waxes and wanes. It comes down to this: who do you want to tell about your day? Who is the first person you call when you are sad? Who knows you better than anyone? If you find that, you're not settling, you're choosing to fight for something that's worth the effort. Despite recognizing that there are probably other people in the world that you could be equally happy with. If you don't find someone who makes you happy, that's settling. Not having a rainbows and puppies and Cinderella slipper relationship isn't settling, it's reality. I think it's more romantic. Soulmate is a relative term, not an absolute truth. You get to choose your partner, and you have to make the choice to keep choosing them, every day, for the rest of your life. Doctor, appreciate what you have for what it is. Give and receive love in an honest way. Find a person that makes you feel safe, validated, and heard. If you do that, you'll never settle. I have a massive problem with those lower your standards suggestions. Yes, there are people who try to bat completely above their league, but that's a different beast. And that's their problem, not mine. If they want nothing less than a 10/10, then they want nothing less than a 10/10, and that's all fair and good. Best of luck, have fun, wishing you all the greatest success. But me? Christ, I want to settle down with someone because I love them, not because I ran out of options. Everybody will die. Your parents that gave you life, they will die. Your friends that you cannot imagine living without because they are awesome, they will die. Your soul that you love so much, he or she will die. Your future child, Ren that you raised, will raise, they will die. Your dogs/cats/pets that kisses you after a long day and loves you so much, they will die. You awesome being, you will also die. Yes, we will be all remembered for quite a while, but after a few decades, no one will remember us. Great question. During the Bronze Age, last names were highly uncommon, especially in the Middle East. Instead, in order to differentiate two people of the same first name, the father's first name and context was often included as their full name. Bin something equals son of something. This tradition is now commonly replaced by the last name of the father, and without the context, that is son of part. Yeshua wasn't regarded by the majority as the Son of God during his time, or that Mary was impregnated by God. Angel. Yet everyone was referred to by first name and first name of the father. Think of father here in pragmatic terms, that is, there's young Yeshua, my neighbor, living in the house of Yosef, whose brother's name is James ben Yosef, James son of Joseph. That you are what you do day by day, it's related to the you judge other people by their actions but yourself by your intentions. For example, if you're an entrepreneur, then you do little things, or big things, most days to get your business off the ground. You're not an entrepreneur if you've had a vague idea about starting a business someday but haven't actually done anything about it. Likewise, if you want to lose weight, get healthier, learn better social skills, you need to actually take regular day-by-day steps towards doing that. Think I've wandered from my original point, but basically, the accumulation of lots of little daily efforts towards something is much more likely to get you to where you want to be than one giant maximum effort style leap. So many people don't want to hear that, they want the magic button, the instant result. That's why weight loss gimmicks and pyramid schemes have a market. That in the grand scheme of things, nothing really matters. We are floating through an infinitely expanding universe on a speck of dust with no real purpose or guide. So go ahead, and eat that cookie. You earned it. Edit. Sounds like some of you haven't been having your government-mandated existential crisis. Some stupidly high percentage, I think 80%, of people think that they're above average drivers. I'll try to find my source, since I'm pulling this statistic from memory. Edit. Apparently the percentage is 90%. People suck. Bathurst, J. Walton, D. 1998, an exploration of the perceptions of the average driver's speed compared to perceived driver safety and driving skill. Accident Analysis and Prevention, 30, 821-30. Not inherently, just because I'm an alcoholic, doesn't mean that I can't correctly identify you as an alcoholic. It's only when I start implying you're a lesser person than me because you're an alcoholic that I start being hypocritical and wrong. There are varying degrees of privileged people. Those who actively use it, those who don't, those who are aware of it, those who aren't, and it's incredibly short-sighted to pigeonhole every privileged person based on that they are perceived to be privileged by others rather than by their actions or intentions. Yeah, a lot of it was pressure though. My mom always gave us much larger than average dinners, and would always ask me if I wanted more after eating, and if I said no, she'd say please, I just spent hours cooking it. I now get my own stuff and don't put as much, and if she cooks and asks me to eat seconds, I say no anyways. I've been losing weight since then. I was 290 pounds, now I'm 265 pounds after 3 months and losing more. I feel ya. I cut down my portion sizes and I eat a lot less than before, but my husband acts like I'm on the verge of an eating disorder. No honey, I still get my calories in, I'm just not worried about finishing every last bite. If I'm full, I stop. My in-laws take it personally too. Just because I only want 2 tacos and 1 serving of rice, doesn't mean that I don't like it. I fucking love their tacos. An easy little thing that will help is to use smaller plates and bowls. It sounds kind of silly, but people tend to fill up the plate or bowl. So going smaller will essentially cap your portion sizes. It's not gonna change lives alone, but it's a good little way to help prevent you or whoever is serving you from even accidentally giving larger portions.